So I'm coming at it from two different directions right now. First is following the money. And so that is which ecosystems or types of DeFi protocols are attracting new money right now. And if you were to look at it that way, then I would say Ethereum Layer 2s are still, if you look at the activity over time as well as just stablecoin inflows, that's still, I think, a very, very strong, compelling narrative. High throughput Layer 1s are another. So that would be things like Solana, like some other new chains, possibly like Sui. And then if you look at where the money goes, you also have I would say the modular ecosystem. And so that would be, for example, Eigenlayer is an important part of that. Celestia is an important part of that.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic from 4RC. Today's show will be an overview of how to identify, strategize, and participate in airdrops. Airdrops remain one of the best risk-reward opportunities in crypto, and so we're happy to host Patrick Scott from Dynamo DeFi as a special guest to walk us through some of his firsthand experience airdrop hunting this past year across Ethereum L2s, Solana, and Cosmos. But before we do, just a quick word from our sponsors who make the Edge Podcast possible.
Introducing the MANTLE liquid staking protocol, MANTLE LSP, a permissionless, non-custodial ETH liquid staking protocol deployed on Ethereum L1 and governed by MANTLE. With MANTLE LSP, users can stake ETH to instantly receive METH, earn yield and accumulate rewards the longer you stake. METH is the value accumulating receipt token that will give you access to expanded yield opportunities. Stake and watch your yield grow with MANTLE LSP.
For most of us, our crypto journey started with MetaMask, and now with MetaMask Portfolio, we can do so much more. MetaMask Portfolio puts you in control. Use the dashboard to see all your assets and balances across your wallets in one place. The buy feature allows us to buy crypto assets effortlessly with fiat options such as PayPal or credit card. The swap feature allows us to swap any tokens anytime by finding a selection of available rates. The bridge feature allows us to bridge between networks including Ethereum, L1s, and L2s based on the best price and fastest delivery time. And with the stake feature, anyone in a few clicks can stake ETH and earn rewards. Do more in Web3 your way with a safe, simple, and convenient tool that's all in one place. Track and manage your Web3 everything at metamask.io/portfolio. Mike, before we get back to the show, can you explain what is liquid restaking?
Everybody at this point is familiar with liquid staking. It lets you take your staked ETH, mint a liquid staking token, and then use that token in DeFi. Well, the hottest thing in staking right now is restaking. It's the ability to reuse your staked ETH to provide Ethereum's trust layer to other services that want to benefit from it. Services like data availability layers, Oracle networks, other blockchains, and beyond. The benefit of restaking is that you get to earn additional staking rewards on top of your normal staking rewards. Well, currently, if you want to restake your ETH, your only option is to lock up your ETH. The reason that's a problem is because you can't use your restaked ETH in DeFi. We're launching ETH, the ETHER.FI liquid restaking token, because with liquid restaking, users get the benefit of staking rewards, restaking rewards, and they get to collect loyalty points for ETHER.FI and Eigenlayer through this token. So it's the easiest way to get exposure to two up-and-coming early protocols, and on top of that, get all the benefits of staking and restaking.
To learn more about ETH liquid staking and liquid restaking, go to ETHER.FI.
It all started so simply with CryptoKitties and Maker on Ethereum, but quickly became complex with more applications and many chains. Today, everyone agrees UX issues are the biggest blocker standing in the way of crypto adoption. Introducing AVOCADO. Multichain UX redesigned from the ground up. The first wallet to abstract networks, accounts, and gas. One gas tank to pay transaction fees on all chains. In USDC. And native access to INSTADAPP's powerful, custom DeFi strategies. AVOCADO, one wallet to rule all chains.
All right, let's introduce Patrick Scott, the creator of Dynamo, DeFi, YouTube, and Substack, and the co-founder of CoinBeats. Patrick, welcome to the Edge Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
What we're going to do with this podcast is we're going to try to give a bit of like an airdrop guide, and we're going to talk a bit about the risk reward, the opportunity to participate in airdrops. We're going to talk a bit then about how to start to identify those. And by the way, a lot of what I just referenced will link to videos in the show notes from the Dynamo DeFi channel. Patrick has overviews of all different chains and all different projects. So really awesome, more detailed follow-up there for you if you want that. And then we'll try to highlight maybe some of our favorite airdrop opportunities. I know one of them that we've been talking quite a bit about is Eigenlayer. But anyways, on that note, why don't we talk really briefly about your background? And I'm curious, like, what drew you into this space and now has you working full time?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny how crypto has a way of, when people get into it, it tends to suck you in. Where I was joking a few months ago that there was some, actually, I think it was maybe Larry Fink from BlackRock said something about positive about Bitcoin. And I said, in another year, he's going to be going on CNBC to shill some layer one, just because crypto sucks you in once you start to get into it. So the way I first got into it was back in 2017. I was working in corporate finance at the time, and like a lot of people, basically a coworker shilled Litecoin to me, and I got it. I made a Coinbase account, bought it, and then quickly graduated to buying much more risky altcoins and wrote everything down 95% in 2018. So not, probably a pretty typical intro to it, even if not a overwhelmingly successful first intro.
Do you recall any of the other tokens there? This is a fun trip down memory lane. What else did you buy?
Actually, some of them survived. I think Request Network was one of them. Request Network survived. TRX, of course, still around, but I think I bought it near the exact top.
I bought some TRX at the top. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Justin's son conned me into that. And then
there was one, I don't even remember the name now. The ticker was something like fun. It was something, it was supposed to be a blockchain for like
I remember that one.
Circuses or casinos or something. I don't think it's still around.
I had a bag of, I think, VeChain back in the day, and then Dash. I was starting to run some master nodes in Dash. That was fun times.
Do you guys remember the narrative around all the different like Ethereum alternatives? These were like, what I mean to call out is Cardano was being called the Ethereum of Japan. Neo was being called like the Ethereum of China. Icon was being called the Ethereum of Korea, which all of this is so ridiculous too, because like once you understand crypto and you understand like the sort of permissionless nature of it, it's even more ridiculous. It's almost like, showing your cards that like, I am a complete idiot that I thought that this made sense to have an Ethereum of like of a part of the world or some like geo. Anyways,
I gotta say,
times.
your like recall on the Ethereum killers, like in different geographies, is really impressive.
Is that those? Well, that's because I got wrecked so badly on those. I didn't have enough money to get that wrecked, I guess, back then. But they taught me a lot of lessons. I watched those tokens go to basically zero during the bear market. Oh, Dragon Chain! I remember Dragon Chain because they were partnered with Disney, even though they were not. It's all forgiven.
Amazing.
It's all forgiven now. We learned our lessons. Oh wait, IOTA was partnered with Microsoft because they were using like Microsoft Azure, or maybe it was AWS. It was just ridiculous. Anyways, Patrick, so you're working in traditional finance. You learn about Litecoin and crypto from a friend, and yeah, what's the highlights reel of what happens over the next few years? Like, did you stick with crypto after that into the bear market, or did you ever quit on it and come back to it later?
Yeah, so unfortunately I stuck with it for about until probably late summer 2018, and then I kind of lost interest. I had other things going on, unfortunately for myself. And then in 2020, when everything was shut down, I started to become interested. interested again. I was stuck at home, like a lot of people, looking for ways to make money online, looking for things to do, and honestly, really starting to study more about the actual technology of it. So when I was in traditional finance, or rather traditional corporate finance, I was managing budgeting and forecasting for a large sales area for a consumer packaged goods company. So I was basically running their budget for their Walmart sales region, and that included a lot of forecasting. And at the time, I had this thought, well, like realizing how centralized that whole system is, and this is going to come back to crypto, but realizing how centralized that whole system of food supply chain was, where we would have something where it was like one warehouse was backed up, and then I would see those effects cascade through the entire system and cause delays of weeks somewhere else. And realizing how fragile those sorts of centralized systems are. And at the time, I had this idea, okay, there must be a better way to rebuild things in a way that's decentralized, but didn't really know how. And then in 2020, as I started to actually dive into the tech more, realizing, crypto is how. And even though finance is different than something like supply chain, having that decentralized layer for payments and communications and everything else is kind of, I think that's the foundational layer that you can then build other decentralized systems on. So started to get more into it in 2020, sticking mostly to majors with ETH and Bitcoin. Then over the course of the year, like a lot of people, got more and more heavy into DeFi. At the time, I wasn't doing any content yet. I was just in my, little lurker, old account, following people and, on Twitter, YouTube, forums, whatever, trying to figure stuff out myself. And then 2021 happened, and I got really into DeFi. So spending a lot of time on a lot of different chains, playing that meta back then. I don't know when the average viewer of this started using DeFi, but back then there was this meta that when new chains launched, starting with, I would say, Binance Smart Chain and PancakeSwap, you could buy and farm the DEX token on the new chain. And then that was like almost a guaranteed payoff when that chain gained traction eventually. No longer the case, by the way, if anyone's watching this, because too many people have caught on. It's been 3 years. But so I was doing that very heavily throughout 2021. And then everyone was into crypto, as I'm sure you remember, right? Everyone was all about crypto. So my family members started getting into crypto. And my dad, who's relatively young, he's mid-50s, my dad started getting into it, and he had bought some Avalanche. And I was telling him, you can go to this DEX and you can farm it and it will earn you 110% APR and you can compound it. And he said, okay, sounds great. How do I do that? And I couldn't find a video to send him. As like at the time, very few people were covering multi-chain DeFi farming. This was about May of 2021. And so I said, okay, I'll record a quick one. If you can't figure this out, probably other people can. At the time, you couldn't even withdraw. AVAX wasn't on Coinbase yet, and you couldn't withdraw it to the Avalanche C chain. You had to withdraw it to the Avalanche X chain, which is their chain for like, I guess it's like staking and those sorts of things. And then you have to transfer it using the Avalanche wallet. So I made a tutorial for it, and then checked back a couple months later. And at the time, it felt like a ton of views. It had a few hundred views. I was like, wow, I can post a video and people will watch it. And I cringe looking back at the video, even though I have it up, because the quality was so bad, right? I had no camera. I was using a $20 microphone I got on Amazon, no editing at all. So I would pause and say, just stop in the middle. But people were watching it. So I said, hey, I can probably make some more DeFi videos. And then to sort of come at it from a different angle. So I started making DeFi videos. And then at the same time, I was also thinking, well, how can I wasn't really happy with the old career. So I was thinking, what can I do to take something in a different direction that plays more into my strengths? And I had read this concept that you should take two things you're good at and you should figure out how you can combine them. And so I said, okay, well, I'm decently good at speaking and teaching people. Every job I've worked, people said, okay, they had me teach new hires, or say, oh, you're good at teaching people. And then I have a degree in economics from Harvard. So I was like, so I understand econ side of things, making tutorials about crypto is how I could actually marry those up, and people wanted to watch it. So I started making those tutorials, basically covering DeFi, all sorts of different chains, whether was Avalanche, Cosmos, Ethereum Layer 2s, Phantom back then, many other chains that are much smaller, and then basically built that up through 2021, 2022, stuck with it throughout the bear market this time, and was fortunate enough to do well enough with trading that I've been able to basically do it full time for a year and a half.
Tell us then more about the state of the Dynamo DeFi YouTube channel and Substack today. So I think you gave a nice sort of origin story there, but just like curious what sort of progress you've seen there. I think I saw you a while ago tweeting that you were clearly seeing an uptick in views, and I think we all know like that's always like a fantastic sign of like the market's coming back, aside from the fact it's personal progress for you. But yeah, anyways, what more can you share about the state of Dynamo DeFi today?
Yeah, totally. So Twitter is actually my largest platform now, just because I think during the bear market that was where more people were active. But Dynamo DeFi YouTube just passed 27,000 subscribers on New Year's Eve, and I would say, well, it was not hit 19,000 on New Year's Eve last year. So decent portion of that growth was in 2023, and actually almost all that growth came in November and December 2023. So I was basically grinding along all year, gaining. Some days I'd gain a few, some days I wouldn't gain any, some days I would lose some, and then November, December, clear sign that retail interest is returning, because suddenly gaining a lot of new subscribers, and a lot of those evergreen videos I made months ago have started to gain traction. And for people who, I guess I didn't really say what I make videos about, it's mostly tutorials. So it'll be everything as basic as how to stake this token to things that are a little bit more in depth, like just trying to be an unbiased overview of a crypto. Recently, I did one that did well about the Say token. And so it talks about what it is, how to use it, the tokenomics, the risks and opportunities. And then basically the opportunity that I saw was to do that sort of what I like to think is comprehensive, unbiased overviews of protocols, but focused on things that are on-chain. Because there's people who do that, but it's mostly things that have already hit Coinbase, or already widely available on centralized exchanges. So trying to do that for tokens that are more focused on-chain. And then also how to use DeFi. So that's Dynamo DeFi YouTube channel. And then Substack, I started that in February of last year, so 2023. And it has about 14,000 some subscribers now. It's done quite well, doing similar things, just tracking trends and on-chain analysis in the crypto market, as well as helpful tools for people to supplement their research with. And that's also had a huge uptick. I think I've gained about half the subscribers on that in the past 3 months.
Congrats on all that. I mean, yeah, the hard work has paid off. The fact that you stuck with it through the bear market, and yeah, you're now reaping the rewards. I got to say too, just like going back to your kind of crypto education, aka origin story, it parallels so much with mine. And I was just thinking as I was listening to you, just, you know, that kind of almost like cliche phrase now, the Chris Dixon quote about, you know, early innovations often look like toys. And that 2017 cycle, everything was very infantile and toy-like. And then 2020, still toys, but maybe less so. I'm hoping that we're moving into these things aren't toys anymore, and it's all becoming real in this next bull run. And I guess, you know, to segue to kind of where you're finding your alpha now, and maybe for users in general, I know like in my early days when I was starting out, creating like your own Twitter alpha curated list was huge for me. But there's so many more tools now. There's Telegram groups, Discord groups, there's YouTube, there's Nansen, there's Defillama, which I've seen you utilize Defillama very well. I think in the bull you were like pointing out kind of like new stablecoin issuance and looking at the supplies, the kind of like inflows and outflows of stablecoins. And that was actually a section on Defillama I didn't even know existed. So thanks for that. But yeah, just kind of curious, like kind of what sort of tooling you're recommending and what you think is the most important, I guess, tool in your toolbox for sourcing where to look next for things?
First, I would say that the Twitter lists, like you mentioned, are still important, especially to find upcoming narratives that might be tougher to quantify. So, for example, if you wanted to get up to speed on the GameFi narrative, which isn't something that's really my focus, but if you wanted to get up to speed on that, then finding niche but high quality Twitter accounts that cover that would be a good way to do it. Or even something more specific. I know someone who's very into the Gnosis ecosystem and has a Twitter list of all the top people in Gnosis and knows everything possible to do with that. I mean, he actually works in the Gnosis ecosystem, but I mean, that's an example of something where you can, the market is not totally efficient. There's protocols that make announcements and they get 10 likes and 200 views. And so if you're really deep in the weeds on a narrative or ecosystem, you can actually learn things that only a relatively few number of people know. But me personally, I use the analytics tools very heavily. Defillama, like you mentioned, is probably it is the one that I use the most heavily for sure. Unfortunately, it used to be maybe 2.5 years ago, just seeing that something was going up in TVL was enough to sort of form a narrative around it. Now it gets a little more complicated because too many people use Defillama. I mean, you have YouTube channels with over 1 million subscribers that now show Defillama on screen. Back then, that wasn't really the case. But that doesn't mean that it's not useful. You just have to dive a little deeper. So looking at stats like volume on chain, transactions, unfortunately, are no longer as helpful with inscriptions because, like we saw recently in the past few weeks, I don't know if you ever showed transaction data on this channel, but you had something like chains that would have 200,000 transactions one day and 5 million the next day because of inscriptions, which just makes the metric completely worthless. But looking at other stats like stablecoin volume, exchange volume, perpdex volume, basically just looking at the fundamentals of economic activity. I mean, what I always like to tell people is I visualize each ecosystem as a mini economy. So they can do an incentives program, and that's like a stimulus for the economy. They can have a boom and bust cycle for the economy, as happens in the real world. And then if you want to measure the performance, you can look at either liquidity inflows, which again is like monetary printing or stimulus, or you can actually look at economic activity like volume and stablecoin transfers, which you could think of as like a proxy almost for GDP in the ecosystem. This is not a 1-to-1 ratio, but I find that a helpful way to see which ecosystems are actually growing.
Okay, so I'm thinking that the way we go about this is we can talk through basically like some of the approaches to different airdrops on different chains. And so I think like what leads into that is I'm curious like what narratives are interesting you the most, because a part of identifying an airdrop is playing into what is a hot narrative or what you believe will be a hot narrative. I know that's like at least one of my criteria for thinking about where am I going to shift my time, my attention, my money, of course, my liquidity, it being limited. So anyways, yeah, what narratives, I guess, are most interesting to you? We're here in early January 2024.
So I'm coming at it from two different directions right now. First is following the money. And so that is which ecosystems or types of DeFi protocols are attracting new money right now. And if you were to look at it that way, then I would say Ethereum Layer 2s are still, if you look at the activity over time as well as just stablecoin inflows, that's still, I think, a very, very strong, compelling narrative. I recently did a recap of 2023 activity, and Ethereum Layer 2's total, we're doing roughly same number of transactions per second as Ethereum mainnet at the start of 2023. Now they're doing something like 6 or 7 times the number of transactions. And I know I said inscriptions can cloud that, but vast majority of those are not inscription. That's DeFi activity. So I would say that's one thing I look at. High throughput Layer 1s are another. So that would be things like Solana, like say, like some other new chains, possibly like Sui. And then if you look at where the money goes, you also have I would say the modular ecosystem. And so that would be, for example, Eigenlayer is an important part of that. Celestia is an important part of that. And then there's some new ones on the horizon that we can talk about if you want to, that I think also will play an important role in that.
Patrick, do you feel like any of these narratives, maybe ones that you didn't even mention there, are nearing their peak? Like they kind of come in these waves, and it's, you can see it in the buying and selling behavior. Like I think one that stands out is, I think a lot of people should be asking themselves, is Solana, going to continue to see the momentum that they saw? And I'll throw in my 2 cents and say, I think that there's still a lot more growth there this cycle for Solana, but there was a magic moment there with the Jito airdrop. There was a few weeks where really most of the world was blind to like how just exciting and enormous like that ecosystem had grown. And now the secret's out. There's been a run up in terms of new accounts created or new wallets and accounts created for different Solana apps. So anyways, not to put words in your mouth with Solana there, but any of the narratives that you feel like might be nearing their peak?
Yeah, so it's kind of like you said, you have to go where the puck is going. I'm still farming Solana airdrops heavily, for the record, just because the way I look at it is Sol is a part of my portfolio. I think it's going to keep doing well. I think a good portion of the percent gains, if you were holding from under $20, I think if you managed to get under $10 in the brief period, it was around there. A lot of the good portion of the percent gains are gone, but it's part of my portfolio, and I still think it's going to do well. And you can put that Sol to use in the ecosystem, and that's applications like MarginFi, Camino, etc. So I think it probably had it did, objectively speaking, had a local top a week ago when it went to 120 and then has retraced since then. I don't think the top is in. If you look at the sorts of applications that are being built on there, a lot of times I would say they're arguably different in terms of what they're offering than sort of the value proposition that you would have on something like Ethereum mainnet. So I think that it's going to still have that niche, right? People who want to trade. There were people, for example, DCAing 10 cents at a time into meme coins on Solana. And if there's a demand for that, then there's going to be a demand for a chain that can offer that. You can argue about whether that's what role that will have in the future of finance, but that's still I think going to be a source of activity. And there's a lot of other interesting things on Solana as well, right? They have let's see, I've got my Helium mobile card right here. So they have, for example, the Helium network. A lot of DPIN activity is being built on there. So I think it'll still do well. And then if I'm going to hold Sol, I might as well put it to work by trying to farm airdrops. I mean, one thing I think that people sort of get mixed up with airdrops is it's basically yield farming by another name, because basically what you're doing is rather than farming the token with a set APR right now, what you're doing is you are depositing into the protocol with the expectation that eventually when they launch a token, you'll get an allocation. And sometimes we can talk about points later, but there's even a point system that you can accumulate points. And there's obviously an assumption that the points will translate to an airdrop. I don't think I've heard of anyone who did a point system that didn't do an airdrop. Although that would be pretty sleazy if someone did that, right?
That would be such a disaster. Oh my gosh. Somebody will do it though. Like, somebody in crypto will do it. Just like a point you were making there that I think of when thinking of airdrops is like this kind of like game theory that emerges when you're thinking through this thing. So like, I agree with DeFi Dad here that I think some of those early ones are kind of maybe, I don't want to say played out, but the opportunity has diminished some. But if the majority of people start thinking that way and maybe kind of give up on the Camino or the MarginFi airdrop, then that kind of can create new opportunity there even still. Like if you know what I mean? Like, so like just that, like that game theoretic kind of approach to airdrop farming is really interesting to me too. And sometimes I think like, well, maybe I don't even want to follow the money. Maybe I just want to go somewhere and stake my claim where there's less people, but if I've done some research and I have conviction, I think this is where the puck is going as well. I think like that's the way I was thinking about the Cosmos ecosystem kind of earlier on. I was like, okay, Cosmos is kind of hard to use, kind of bad UI UX. Maybe therein lies opportunity. I think that's been totally squashed. Like I think it's the secret is out, thanks in part to you probably, Patrick, with your videos. But I think it'd be good to just to kind of like walk through what we're talking about with this kind of new Cosmos meta that's emerged with airdrop farming. I mean, it's been around with like Cosmos token Atom has had this built in for ages, but maybe just like walk us through what's happening with staking and airdrops, this kind of like passive game.
Yeah, totally. First, actually, I wanted to make a quick point sort of about transition. I would say airdrop farming was mostly focused on Ethereum layer 2s, if you were to look in early to mid 2023, and then it kind of transitioned to Solana in the fall. Because I think there's an important analogy there. So for longest time, I would say the main airdrop people were farming was Arbitrum before they had a token last year. I was farming it heavily. Many other people were. And I would say a lot of people, especially large players, kind of had discounted the value of that because there had been a idea for a while that airdrops, especially airdrops that a lot of people were qualifying for, wouldn't be very valuable. And then lo and behold, you had random people who just used Arbitrum every day who got $10,000 plus. And then because of that, you had a lot of industrial scale airdrop farming of Ethereum layer 2s where you had hundreds of thousands of wallets on zkSync era. And so that opportunity was no longer the same as it had been on Arbitrum, right? Because suddenly if you just wanted to use your one wallet, you're competing with these people who have hundreds and hundreds of wallets. And I think kind of a similar thing played out with Solana recently, where Jito was so valuable. I mean, even more valuable if you look at on a per person basis, where before that you could just, people deposited $100 in Jito and cashed out $15,000. It was completely insane. And then that's probably not going to be the case anymore. So like you said, you kind of have to look at where the puck is going. And I think one place that the puck, I actually don't think it's fully played out, but one place you could look at for the puck to move to is Cosmos. And Cosmos has this interesting thing in that it's a lot of different blockchains. They're interoperable. And then now there's Cosmos blockchains that are also providing infrastructure for rollups. So also tying into the layer 2 scaling vision for Ethereum. And so basically for people who aren't familiar with how Cosmos works, because each chain is its own layer 1, each chain in Cosmos, when they'll do their initial token distribution, oftentimes they'll airdrop tokens to people who are staking other Cosmos chains. So in the past, that was oftentimes Atom, since that's the token of Cosmos Hub. And you can kind of think of why they would do that, right? Because they want people who are going to hold their token and stake it. They want people who are already involved in the community. And there's some degree of, yes, people use multiple wallets, but there's some degree of Sybil protection there because you're actually basing it on you can base it on how much people have staked rather than just basing it on DEX volume, which is easy to wash trade, right? It's a lot easier to wash trade on a DEX than it is to buy 5,000 Atom tokens and stake them just in the hopes that you get an airdrop. And so now you're seeing that for Atom. And then I think the other big one you're seeing a lot of, we just saw an airdrop this week, but you're seeing a lot of hype for is Celestia, because Celestia provides data availability for modular chains. And so the idea is that chains that use Celestia or even other chains that are building infrastructure for modular chains will want people who are holding TIA tokens to hold their token. And we saw that with the Dimension airdrop this week. They airdropped to Atom stakers, Celestia stakers, and then several other groups as well.
Were you surprised actually with the Dimension airdrop? I didn't see them rewarding as many different groups as that. I would have thought it would be, TIA stakers and Atom holders or Atom stakers, but it actually extended to some Ethereum L2 users and more folks than that. It's an interesting approach with like all that's available now multi-chain wise. And I think it's kind of a wake-up call or reminder that if you bury your head in the sand in Ethereum L2s, you miss a lot of opportunity. If you bury your head in the sand with Solana, you miss a lot of opportunities. You bury it in the sand with Cosmos, like you really should keep an open mind to trying these apps.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that it's all becoming interconnected now too, right? You'll have roll-ups at some point that leverage Celestia, this new Dimension application, right? You'll have roll-ups that leverage Dimension. You'll have roll-ups. I mean, Eigenlayer is more explicitly in Ethereum, but you'll have roll-ups that you already have roll-ups that use Eigenlayer as data availability. So actually being aware of all these different chains and narratives, I think it's going to become much. Sometimes I think there'll be chains that it's much less clear explicitly which ecosystem you're using because with expanding cross-chain capabilities, Axelar, Layer 0, and then some of these more modular ecosystems, there may be applications that actually leverage technology from different areas, and it's important to be aware of that. And even if you don't care about these other things, or you only want to, your main goal, which is totally fair, is, for example, to acquire ETH or BTC, then if there's an opportunity to pick up money on the ground, then you can accomplish that goal by picking up money on the ground. Now, another thing I found helpful over the years, though, is if you use a lot of ecosystems and you see certain patterns repeat, and for example, a common pattern that you see is you see DEX volume starts to go up on a chain, APRs start to go up, and then eventually stable coins start to enter the chain. And that's basically, to a T. You can go and look at actually tweeted about it at the time, but you can go and look at the Defillama charts. That's to a T what happened on Solana, where DEX volume was rising through October and November, and then finally, all at once, all this money started to rush in to chase the airdrops, to chase the yields. And so you see that pattern play out over time, and that's just one of many patterns. And so you can almost view some of these other chains as like training grounds for things that could play out in your ecosystem of choice eventually.
So Patrick, with everything we've discussed, let's imagine that I am a newer user to DeFi. What sort of like steps would you recommend for getting started identifying and participating in airdrops?
Sure. So the first thing I would do is go to Defillama, and they have a section on their website that shows a list of tokenless protocols. So that's the very first thing I would do, is because you're probably not going to get an airdrop if there's already a token. But if there's not a token yet, there's a good chance they do some sort of airdrop at some point. And then within tokenless protocols, what I would do is I would look for two things. First is if it's in a ecosystem that's growing. For example, if it had been on Solana earlier or a couple months ago, that would have been great. I still think there's some opportunity there, but that would have been great. If there's another ecosystem, for example, Injective is one that has a lot of protocols without tokens. That's the price of their main INJ token has gone up a lot. That could be an interesting one to look at. And second, I'd look for protocols with points systems. So that was what Jito did. They had a points system, and it's kind of become the norm now. And I haven't, unfortunately, found a good list of protocols that have points programs going on, but that's maybe an advantage, because if you actually are willing to put in the time and do the research, then you can find some that are, honestly, I think, pretty underfarmed. For example, there's one, I have no affiliation with them. There's one I was looking at earlier called Prime Protocol. They're backed by Jump, and they basically allow you to deposit on one EVM chain and borrow on another. And they have about $15 million of TVL with a points program. But it's one of those things that just hasn't gained the sort of awareness that some of these other programs are. And there's lots like that have $10 million, even $1 million of TVL, and have an ongoing points program. And you can find those if you're willing to put in the time.
I'll add to that. One of the criteria for me is looking at the teams that are backing those tokenless protocols. So assume you've got an L1, L2 that is healthy and growing, has like a lot of interesting narratives, has like a ton of investment money in it. Then I'm thinking about what investors are behind it. And, it's a joke to look at some of these projects with certain investors and even wonder, just call it what it is. If Jump is backing them, there's a token coming. They wouldn't invest if there wasn't a token coming.
And then throw in they have a points program, right?
That's right. They've got a points program.
Totally agree with all that. And I think for me, having done my own research and having conviction again on like what I think will be successful down the road, I would just add in like with all of those points, that's kind of like that determining factor that will like kind of make me put that extra effort into to go out to like maybe like whatever it is, a newer chain or newer app or something like that. So we can't do an airdrop podcast without talking about Eigenlayer. So Patrick, maybe for our listeners, if you can just kind of maybe this is difficult, but a brief description of Eigenlayer, maybe why it's so important, and like what ways are there right now to, I guess, access this looming airdrop that we know is coming. They're doing a points program. If you can go over some of those things, that'd be great.
Yeah, totally. So Eigenlayer, I think, is probably going to be the biggest airdrop of 2024, assuming they do one. I can't really see anything else on the horizon that would have the potential to be larger in total value distributed at launch. Eigenlayer's basically protocol it's called for restaking Ethereum, which probably doesn't explain what it is, but it allows you to take your staked ETH and then put it to double use by helping to secure other chains that leverage Eigenlayer. And then they also offer data availability similar to Celestia. So one way to think about that at a high level for someone is that new layer 2 rollups that are built will leverage Eigenlayer for either data availability or for their restaking. And so the first way to qualify for that is people should try to restake. Now, I think their currently caps are full, right? Yeah, I think they just filled up again. So people would want to watch for when those open up.
I can drop in just one tiny bit of alpha there. So as of this recording, the Eigenlayer caps are filled. So the 9 LSTs, you can't deposit any more of them. There is a trick there, though. There are 2 tokens that are currently available, Easy ETH by Renzo protocol, and then there's ETH by ETHER.FI. So you can drop in some ETH, and it's a single token. You don't have to go mint an LST and then restake it. And so part of the reason we really like it is it costs like $3, $4, $5 of gas on Ethereum mainnet, which Patrick, is pretty remarkable for Ethereum mainnet. So anyways, your Ether gets paired up with other Ether in an eigenpod, and that is uncapped. So there's like basically one doorway into Eigenlayer now, and the only way to get in that door is to ETH by Ether.FI or Easy ETH by Renzo protocol.
It natively restakes into the beacon chain. And basically ETH is an LST and LRT all in one. So very, very well designed and very well thought out design.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to add is, again, this is speculation. Most things with airdrops, unless you're talking about specific points, are speculation. However, one thing I think could increase someone's chance of getting a nice Eigenlayer airdrop as well is that there are actually active chains that leverage Eigenlayer's data availability, specifically MANTLE network, formerly built by what was formerly called BitDAO. MANTLE leverages Eigen data availability right now, and I could definitely see them rewarding people who are actually using applications that were built using their data availability service.
That's a great call out, because also with the MANTLE token, if you stake that token, similar to the Cosmos ecosystem, you get MANTLE ecosystem airdrops, but it wouldn't shock me if MANTLE stakers got an Eigen airdrop as well, like you're kind of calling out. So
we just had Jordy Alexander on from, who's kind of like a head of strategy type role. It's called Chief Alchemist. And yeah, to your point, Patrick, there's kind of like a DeFi paradise that they're building there. It's a value prop we've noticed with some other L2s, but Jordy is a really interesting sort of figurehead to be guiding that strategy. And I think as a result, they've got this like METH LST token, which is earning 7.2%, double the rate of the average staking yield. And then they've got this MUSD, which is essentially Ondo's token that is backed by T-bill yield. So like really cool stuff. I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff we just mentioned, like thought this would take years for some of this to come to fruition in DeFi, but these are very like consumer friendly types of products. And part of that stack, as you mentioned, is this Eigen DA. Patrick, in terms of the other few major airdrops, like just going to kind of like rattle these off, like where do you prioritize your time right now on Solana? We talked about Solana has been a really hot airdrop chain. What's the next biggest airdrop you think, or the next biggest few airdrops that you are looking forward to?
Yeah, so I think the largest ones on Solana will be, first off, I know this is a DeFi podcast, but their NFT marketplace doesn't have a token and has an active points program. So I think that one's going to be quite large because their NFT marketplace is truthfully doing a lot of volume. So I've been accruing points on there.
Is that Tensor? Sorry to interrupt.
That's Tensor. Oh yeah, sorry, I should clarify. That's Tensor. But I think what's going to be really big is also their lending markets. So their two largest, I believe they're the two largest lending markets. Certainly the largest one, MarginFi, doesn't have a token. Camino is either the second or third largest lending protocol, also doesn't have a token. MarginFi has a points program. Camino says they have a points program coming soon. I think that both of those are going to be quite valuable. Now, the thing to keep in mind with MarginFi is that they've had their points program running since the summer. So you have some people, myself included, who have been farming it since then. And it would be a steep run to catch up unless you're depositing millions of dollars. But that doesn't mean that it's not worth trying to get some kind of allocation. But just people should know that that's already been farmed pretty heavily.
Might have to rebrand to a MarginFi whale if things work out here. So how about some of the other major L2s that I know you've covered on your channel? So the few that are top of mind for me, and I'm wondering if you could like rank, which of these you think is worth spending more of your time, attention, liquidity on. We've got Linea, zkSync, StarkNet. Was Metis another one as well? I'm probably forgetting a few more here. There's another one called Mode that I just learned about. Anyways, where are you prioritizing your time?
Yeah, so first, as far as Metis, they already have their token, so I'm not looking at it for an airdrop for the layer 2 specifically. However, could look at it as a high growth DeFi ecosystem, and there might be protocols in there that would be worth looking at for potential airdrops, or just farming outright as a normal yield protocol. But in terms of which ones I'm focused on for airdrops, I would rank them as StarkNet, Linea, and then zkSync era. And a reason for that is that I put StarkNet at the top because there's the most friction to doing it.
I love that. Totally agree. Yep.
And the technology is great too, but the thing is, I would say there's the most friction to using it, which people might consider to be a reason not to use it, but lots of people are going to consider it a reason not to use it. So I think it's less likely to be heavily farmed. And oftentimes you'll see chains will later make it easier for people to access. And if you were there ahead of time, then suddenly all the liquidity can rush in. There's one right now. This isn't an airdrop, but say, for example, I posted at the time, I said, is it bearish or bullish when I'm having like an insane time trying to access a chain to buy their token? And it turned out to be bullish because I think it was around 20 cents at the time that I couldn't find a bridge to access it. And then now it's done very well. So StarkNet's number one. Linea I would put at number 2 because they are built by Consensus, creator of MetaMask, and also because they have this sort of proof of personhood type thing that you can do through their on their network. And so I think that they're going to have pretty strong attempts to stop Sibblers. DAD will be entirely successful, but I think that they're going to have pretty strong attempts to do that. The zkSync era I think will be valuable. It's just that so many people are farming it that it's going to be a little bit more competitive.
To go back to a point you made, I think the easier something is to access and use, it's probably more likely more will participate and hence will dilute the opportunity in terms of the airdrop. And to zkSync's credit, I think that they've built more bridges, better applications, and so on. Whereas like StarkNet for me is like, there's so little to do on it. And you got to download new wallets. Like there's nothing like a MetaMask that you can use that you're already using on other chains. So yeah, totally buy into that. The harder the UX is, or the more challenging, probably the better the opportunity is, the less likely others will participate. Patrick, though, this is probably a good place for us to start to wrap up. So I want to first invite you to come back again. I feel like we clearly ran out of time. There's too much to talk about with you. We're all excited for all these different farming opportunities. But for folks that are, whether you're new or you're a pro in DeFi, you should follow Patrick on YouTube. The YouTube channel is Dynamo DeFi. It's at Dynamo DeFi if you go to youtube.com. You should follow Dynamo_Patrick on Twitter, X, whatever people call it nowadays. And then I wanted to give you the final word to tell us a little bit about CoinBeats before you go. So you're the co-founder of CoinBeats. What is it and how can we get involved?
Totally. CoinBeats is a platform I've been building, and basically what it is it's educational materials, and then paired with the educational materials, we'll have live trivia contests that you can earn token rewards for. And those will either be stable coins or the tokens of the protocol that we're making content. So for example, we did a few recently with, I would say, pretty well-regarded protocols in the Arbitrum ecosystem, where they put up prize pools ranging from $150 to $500. And then people who participated in these live shows could answer questions about what the application did, and then getting into some more detailed features of the application. And then the people who answer the most correct, the fastest, actually got paid for it.
And Patrick, if you're a protocol that wants to be featured on CoinBeats, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch would be to message me on Twitter, and then I can connect you with my co-founder as well as our BD person.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again. Thanks for being so generous with your time, and just keep up the great work. Like I said, I was watching one of the Say videos, which is a more recent one, and just really enjoy how you explained it all. So anyways, hope we can have you back in the future.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're a talented founder or developer, please consider reaching out to our team at fourthrevolution.capital. And for future episodes of the Edge podcast, please check out our link tree at edge_pod.